Hello dear viewers and welcome to a new video. If you're a fan of my channel, you may know my love for side-scrolling beat-em-ups. Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Final Fight and many others have all added to that great enjoyment that I receive from this genre. And so because of this love that I have for these types of games, I've decided to create a new playlist on the channel which will focus squarely on scrolling beat-em-ups from times past of yesteryear all the way up to current times. Also, just a quick nod, should you wish to subscribe to the channel, I would be very grateful. Side-scrolling beat-em-ups are great fun to play alone, but they are really great fun to play with others. It just so happens that a certain mother dwarf of mine also likes to play scrolling beat-em-ups. So any such game on this playlist of games will be played by myself and my dear mother. If an elderly dwarf mum can enjoy some beat-em-ups, then I imagine you could too. So, the first game in this series that we will be talking about is Wulverblade. Wulverblade, of course, sirs, is a scrolling beat-em-up, developed by Fully Illustrated and Darkwind Media. It was released on the 30th of January 2018. The setting of Wulverblade, rather than the modern streets of a fictional city or some fantastical land with monsters and such, is rather set in the historical past of Britain and the Roman Empire. The story revolves around a group of Celtic warriors who rise up against the invading Roman Ninth Legion. The Ninth Legion did exist and were stationed in Britain, but it seems there's no definitive evidence that tells exactly what happened to them. The plot of this game plays out a fictional story in which the Ninth Legion is engaged in battle with the local populace of our dear island. The game is two-dimensional with a cartoonish, hand-drawn kind of art style. There are lots of bright, solid colours here which keep the game more than light-hearted, even when it gets darker and a little gory. The scheme works well with the art style showing that visceral brutality of combat, but with a brighter tone. There are some cutscenes between levels that tell more of the story as you go, usually quite bloody and dark. With regards to this more cartoony or modern flashlight graphics, I think that is just totally fine. Not every game has to be a love letter to pixel art graphics, even if it would bring me some joy. As long as the style is executed well for the subject, then there is no problem from me. You start the game by selecting a hero to play from a selection of 3. There is Caradoc, who is the main character, whose stats are quite balanced, armed with a sword and shield. Brennus, a large individual dual-wielding a knife and axe. And Guinevere, who is the fastest of the 3, also armed with a sword and shield. They each have their own strengths, weaknesses, and they all essentially have the same inputs, but each character executes them in a different way, plus there's a few unique to each of them. The combat of Wulverblade revolves around the use of weapons. Unlike Streets of Rage or Final Fight, the characters don't use their bare fists, but rather the melee weapons they have to hand, similar to Golden Axe. Each hero has an attack sequence from simply spamming the attack button, along with jumping and dashing attacks. The combat is quite visceral and bloody, with the player cutting swathes through enemies, lobbing off limbs and heads as they go. The player can pick up weapons and indeed the said limbs and heads of their foes, which they can then lobbist at thy enemy. There are also weapons like spears, which the player can use over their main loadouts but for a limited time. Then there are great weapons like large axes and swords which you have in addition to rather than temporarily replacing your standard weapons. This adds another element to the gameplay with you now able to not only perform large sweeping attacks, but you can weave in combos of both your usual weapons and these great weapons together. There is a grab system in play. You can take hold of enemies and stab them or throw them as you might expect, but it isn't as involved a grapple system like Streets of Rage. The main focus is definitely on the weapon combat. On top of this is the power bar each player has. When increased to full through gameplay, the player can go into a rage, which makes them invulnerable for its duration while attacking faster and regaining health as they psychotically slash and cut their way through the enemy. This can be a good lifesaver held until you are low on life to regain some health quickly and get back into the fight. Finally, each of the players can call on some walls once a level that will do heavy damage to all enemies on screen. This is something reminiscent of the limited use RPG attack in the first Streets of Rage, or perhaps the magic in Golden Axe, though much more limited in use. So, the combat is engaging and visceral, though I would have liked a little more combo or special move action if I'm honest, but it isn't really a big deal. The other element I think could have been a bit more involving was perhaps unlocking extra moves and such like the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games or the Streets of Rage 4 with the Dr. X features. The player is able to unlock a wide variety of weapons as you go, so there's some definite replayability here. The general gameplay is good fun, and it is amusing cutting off all the limbs of the baddies and then throwing them back at them. The team behind the game have clearly put a lot of effort into the historical authenticity of it. Besides influencing the gameplay, level design and foes in the game, there are collectibles you can pick up as you progress through the levels, which add to a lexicon of knowledge covering all sorts of historical information. Going this extra mile to provide some real background knowledge of the time period Wulverblade is based on shows how much the developers cared for this historical accuracy and of course sharing that knowledge with the player. I would recommend this game to anyone that has a love of side-scrolling beat-em-ups, and perhaps anyone looking to try one for the first time. The gameplay is fun, and you can happily get to hacking your way through the invading legion in no time. And as to whether Mother Dwarf likes it, it is a definite thumbs up from her, and jolly good fun. Wulverblade is priced at £14 in the UK, and you can oftentimes pick it up on sale, so I would heartily recommend. And there we go, our first video from the new playlist. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course if you do, perhaps think of subscribing. I thank you dear viewers, and now close the doors to this dwarven hold once more. See you next time.